it totally made up for it. Because, normally you have that problem with trading these sorts of shares, because trading these sorts of shares in a legitimate context, you would expect the changes in price to be like 5%, something like that. So you start getting close to your margin there. But in this case, we were looking at changes of 50%, or doubling our money, or tripling our money, right? In which case the 5% premium they might charge on those shares didn't matter anymore. Yes. Yeah, he's asking about, did we look at more of the content of the emails? For instance, the content that these spammers were claiming. You look at these emails and they say things like target prices and target, dates, like they've got all this cool insider information. Really, we found that for the most part, we looked a little bit at it, but it was all noise to the best of our judgment. The target prices they did, they were just arbitrary. I mean, even the example you can see right here on the screen, the right side, WEXE, that was that week where those guys... More the target dates? Yeah, the target dates didn't mean anything either. The only thing that correlated with anything was the volume that they were able to send out. Because to the targeted user group, right, you expect that their view of it is not about what the date range is. Excuse me. They just want to get into it as soon as possible, right? So everybody rushed in as soon as they decided that. We didn't see any correlation to these various things, because it's not acting on real information, right? There is no press release coming out. There's no product. Yeah, from what we saw, I don't think the duration of their spamming campaign ever actually correlated to what was going on. Sometimes you would see, especially earlier on in 2006, you would see the spamming campaigns kind of, the trading would last more than one day. Later on, as you approach December 2006, January 2007, the trading was all done within one day. The demand just couldn't put up with 5 days of trading. Next question, right there. Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, okay, so he's actually asking about repeat hits. That would be a stock that's touted one week. It does that full up and down like you saw, and then it's touted again like the next week or a few weeks down the road. Yeah, and we did see that. We did see that with a number of stocks pretty well across the board. The second, third, N number times they would do it. Each successive try would have worse results. One thing that was kind of interesting, though, that you would start to see is some of these stocks, like GDKI, LITL, a couple of these other things, you would see it spammed about 1 week, and not that it was spammed the previous week or the week before, but if you looked, some of these were hit like the year before, or they were hit like 8 months before, a year and a half before. Some of these stocks were getting pounded like on a regular basis, and I don't know whether they were inside jobs or whether they were just really unlucky. But some of these were really, really getting thrown around all the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's asking about basically data analysis of all of the OTC or pink sheet stocks in order to see these things without even looking at the spam. Just seeing that one is starting to spike or that there's an abnormally large volume of buy on a particular stock, and then assuming that that will become a spammed stock. And you're right, that's doable. And you can do the data mining to try to look at the whole market to find these hits. You do run into problems, though, because, like I mentioned, not all of the buy-ins from these people were successful. So you might see an enormous volume buy-in, and then you join in too, and nothing happens, right? Maybe they didn't even get any emails out that week. And we did a little bit of looking at this market, where we looked at some stocks, and we tried to... We basically did exactly that. We would look at the volumes, and we saw some where it looked like there were buy-ins, and then we never saw a single email about that stock. So it was kind of weird. There were also some of the stocks, once again, SodaStraw View, we weren't seeing all of the stocks that were touted. Some of the other websites around that were kind of tracking this thing and building little fake portfolios around them, they occasionally popped up with stock symbols that we didn't even see. I mean, we didn't even see a single email about them. So we were still our very limited view. So who knows? Yeah. Good question. Okay, there's two questions there. In that limited view, where did our sample set come from? It came from my email address at MIT. That's where it came from. Myself and Kyle's, actually. At that time, we were getting tons and tons of spam email. Part of the reason for that, and I'll kind of let everyone know this now, MIT has a lot of mailing lists. The place runs on mailing lists. So the spammers would get the emails of these mailing lists, and then so you would get multiple copies of emails. You'd get it through all sorts of different sources. How representative was our sample? I don't know. It's really tough for me to say. It seemed representative enough to the sense that, we saw all this happening. But like I said, there were certainly things that we were missing. Definitely. All the way in the back there. Uh-huh. True. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so he's asking if we considered other factors, such as hacked accounts and things like that, buying some of these and moving up values like that. Yeah, maybe. If you look up this stuff, there are examples of those sorts of things happening. Ours was mostly focused on the spam effect specifically because that was what we saw the most of, all the time in our inbox. But the other stuff did happen. There were a number of, there was some Russian organized crime group that had a botnet that was, stealing passwords to whatever trading accounts and buying up stocks through those zombie accounts. And, all this stuff was happening. But I think the biggest effect was just from spam and normal, actual people buying it. Yes, down there. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Of what? Gray listing. Yeah. That's actually a good question. So gray listing, right? And I assume what you mean by that is when it gets reported through to these various brokers, and it says hey, stop having people trade these stocks, right? And that happened. In fact, that happened almost every time. Every time that we went to go buy a stock, I had to call up, whatever online broker I was using and tell them over the phone to let me trade that stock because they wouldn't even let me trade it through my web interface. It would say it was locked and that was an off-limit stock that they didn't want to sell me any of. But despite the fact that I had to jump through extra hoops to even touch any of these stocks, a lot of people still bought them. So that didn't really seem to have an effect. And when we talk about things like Operation Spamalot there, where the SEC locked down 35 of these stocks, they locked those down in March of 2007. Right? The spam on these stocks had stopped in January of 2007. Their lockdown of these, their ceasing of trading in these had no effect on anything. So, take that for what it's worth. I could take one more question. Right there. Great question. Everyone's covering every little extra thing that I wanted to cover, which is great. He asked, did we look at other methods of hyping these stocks, like forums and whatnot? And yeah, we did. We actually saw forums, people discussing these in forums as we were doing this. In fact, I got one right here. There it is. So yeah, that's actually a forum in October to December of 2006 talking about exactly the stock we were looking at, GDKI. And that's people talking about, this seems kind of too good to be true. And other people, there's one that's what is it, need a nice close today, okay. So yeah, people were talking about these. In a couple of those posts, it was clear that these people were, they were kind of pushing them themselves. So that effect was there too. But I think the massive amount of spam was the bigger driver of everything. So with that, that's all. Thank you.